Well, folks, the wall came crumbling down on this day, March the 21st, 2024. It's quite something to see all these wonderful new Americans who the left insists we should welcome with open arms, to be our new friends and neighbors. Watching them just savagely tear through a National Guard fortification, only to arrive, at a fence just a few yards away. They really are acting like animals. They're acting like people who you don't want around you. They're acting like people who would come in, break into a vacant house, and steal it for themselves and claim squatters' rights. That's how they're acting. We've come a long way from the illegal immigrants of my childhood. The guys who would sneak in to pick tomatoes, send some money back home, kind of, lay low, not cause trouble, because they were worried about getting deported. And, everyone you work with, knows, hey, this guy's not supposed to be here. He knows that, you know that, and everyone just gets along fine. But now we have this new generation of illegals. Much like the younger generation in this country, who thinks that they are owed the world. And so, you know what? We just can't keep going along with this. We cannot continue to enable this behavior. For a long time now, the illegals had a good thing going. They sneak across the border. They do some menial labor or whatever. They make some money for their family back home because they can make more here than they could, back in their home country, Mexico, Honduras, etc. Then when they're done working here, they probably go back home, essentially functioning as migrant workers, but without having to go through all the red tape, and deal with all the visas and things. That's a bunch of complication. It can be difficult. It can be expensive. It's a lot easier just to sneak across the border, do what you came to do, wire the money back home via Western Union at the Walmart. But no, that wasn't good enough. Now, the people coming here, they're not coming here to work. They're not coming here to be your friend. They're not coming here for opportunity. They're coming here to steal your country. They've made that abundantly clear. And the American left, who believes that the white man is the great Satan inflicted upon this earth, has taken it upon themselves to assist in this invasion, to literally replace the native population, to steal their homes, to assert squatters' rights for people who are not Americans, so that they can colonize our country. Although, in their opinions, since they claim that most of America was originally Mexico anyway, even though it was only Mexico for a few decades, after the departure of the Spaniards. Of course, who are the people of Mexico? A good chunk of them are descended from Spaniards. If you notice, not every Mexican you meet, a good chunk of them, I forget what the exact percentage is, but they're not all Aztecs. They're not all the folks who were sacrificing people at the altars, or in some case, well, actually no. If they were the people being sacrificed at the altars, their bloodline would have died because they were murdered in the sacrifice. So they're not. They're the descendants of the people who were doing the sacrifices. Not every Mexican looks like that. In fact, a lot of them are, heavily mixed with the old Spaniards, and a lot of them are just plain white, Spaniards. So it's not, it's not like a big racial difference all the time. But nevertheless, it is a big cultural difference. And most of these illegals coming aren't even from Mexico, which is kind of the funny part, because the left tells us, oh, well, these people, they're gonna launch a Reconquista, which, by the way, the Reconquista, very bad when the Spaniards did it in Europe, when the Spaniards took back their country from the Muslim colonists and invaders, the ruling class, when the underclass, in Al-Andalus were the Christian Spaniards. The invading conquerors were the Arabs. Anyway, that Reconquista very bad. But when you take people who aren't even from Mexico, who invade the United States and colonize our homes, assert squatters' rights, use our courts in order to destroy our communities, that's a good Reconquista, you see. That is cosmic justice. And you know what? These are very serious times that call for very serious people. Serious people, unlike the governor of Texas, Greg Abbott. And Greg Abbott is the best of the border governors, as sad as it is. Because the other three border states, who share a border with Mexico, I should say, those three states, once upon a time, I think at one point all four border states had Republican governors, although maybe not at the exact same time. There might have, but as of right now, the other three border states, Arizona, New Mexico, and California, all have Democrat governors who are openly aiding and abetting the invasion, who are helping people come into this country and assert squatters' rights and take over the homes of, excuse me if this sounds a little offensive, Native Americans, people who are from here. The government of those states is actively aiding and abetting in that activity. In Texas, officially, the government is not aiding and abetting that. However, there are NGOs all over Texas that are doing that, who are far more better funded and better organized than the state of Texas itself. And all the while, the state of Texas is worried about what courts have to say about what they're doing. They're worried about and I'm someone who does care about, some of the minutiae things. I think it's interesting in applying the Constitution, but courts don't give a damn. Just so you know, Texas, if you ever want to know if there's any judges who give a damn about how constitutional purity or something like that, just listen to Antonin and Scalia talk about the incorporation doctrine, something that everyone knows is bullshit. But even Mr. Originalist Antonin and Scalia was like, well, that's just been around so long, we can't touch the incorporation doctrine, which doesn't necessarily have anything to do with the current debate over immigration. But just know, judges rule based on their politics, based on what they like, okay? What they want to see happen. That is the only thing that controls. And then they take their knowledge of the Constitution to try and twist it at whether they're right or wrong. They try and just use the Constitution. They couch their arguments for what they want to see happen politically in constitutional terms. So if you actually care about, what's happening in this country, and, you should just care about what's right and wrong, and, not be worried about, is some Democrat judge going to strike me down and tell me, actually, I can't help erect barriers and stop the migrants, from invading our country and stealing our homes. No, when that's happening, when there are 10 million people, we're told, since 2020, who have flooded across the border, you don't wait on courts for that. If courts tell you to pause and say, actually, no, we're going to consider this question. So for right now, you just can't, you can't deport anybody. You can't enforce any of this. You have to just let them all in. That's when you ignore what the courts are doing. That's when you pull an Andrew Jackson and you say, the court has made its ruling. Now let's see them enforce it. And you know what, Greg Abbott? You say, well, but the U.S. Marshals might come and arrest me. It's like, well, so be it. That's your damn job. Nobody else can take that risk. I'm sure there's thousands of people in Texas who would happily take on the legal liability of protecting their entire state and this entire country from the invading hordes of people from all across this planet. Because they're mostly not Mexicans, as we know. But a lot of them are not even from the Americas. These are people who fly into Central America or fly into Mexico from other parts of the world so that they can just cross our border. In fact, there's a lot of Haitians, people who got on a plane, left Haiti, flew to Mexico just so that they could cross into Texas. And so is Governor Abbott doing something about it? Sure, he's doing some stuff. He's not doing enough. I've tried to praise him in the past, but at the end of the day, Abbott always has been and always will be a weak man, and not because he's in a wheelchair. Okay? There are plenty of people. You don't need to, or I should say this, you don't need use of your legs to have a spine. Okay? It's mental fortitude. And I don't know if it's because of fear, cowardice, or if it's just that he lacks a sense of urgency. I don't care what your lawyers around you say. Oh no, we can't stop these people. I don't want to be too tough on them, because I realize that things could be much worse in Texas. Even as bad as they are, they could be worse. Yes, things can always get worse. And Texas is doing more than any other state, but Texas is still doing far less to stop this crisis than any reasonable country with any sort of inkling of self-preservation. And you know what? It doesn't take a lot of resources. You don't have to have these guys all kitted out, like they're going to friggin' Afghanistan. Hell, we know that the Taliban were fighting in Afghanistan. They weren't all kitted out like that until the U.S. left behind all the equipment for them. But if you really wanted to, Greg Abbott, you could deputize a bunch of men who live along border counties and hand them out baseball bats. You don't have to give them guns, because you don't want them shooting people, obviously. That would create a bunch of problems if you're literally shooting at people at this point. When there's this many people, you don't want to give them guns necessarily. Have your border patrol guys have guns, so a few guys with guns in case things get out of hand. Sure, yeah. But give them baseball bats. That's intimidating. A crowd of people, is not going to want to walk up to and charge a line of guys, angry citizens who have been deputized by their governor. They're not going to want to walk up to them when they're, holding a bunch of baseball bats, because you know what? That hurts. So the reason why people are getting so out of hand, why they feel so entitled, is because they have no fear. They have no concept of boundaries. Okay, think of it like a couple of Nickelodeon executives who shall remain nameless, guys who worked on, well, not even executives, not that high, but guys who worked at making a lot of TV shows with young actors, no one specific, who for years and years would push the boundaries and would do creepy things and put their hands all over young kids, 12 to 16, that range. Not toddlers, but kids, teenagers. Okay, and let's just say that not once were either of these guys punched in the mouth. Not once were they even slapped on the wrist. Not once did they get a black eye for any of the crap that they pulled, let alone arrested, although eventually one of them got arrested, and what do you know, that kind of put a stop to it. But these are two men who might have been perfectly fine functioning members of society if those boundaries were set for them, because those boundaries for them, they tested the boundaries. They found that the boundaries did not exist, and so what do you know? They kept pushing and pushing and pushing, and that's what we're seeing happen at the border. It says, Stalin used to say, you take your bayonets and you prod and you stab and you stab and you stab at the enemy until you hit bone. But as long as you're feeling flesh, as long as it's soft, you keep pushing and in and out again and again, until you've completely perforated your enemy, or you hit bone, and if you hit bone, you pull out. But, when you're in the heat of the moment, baseball bat feels a lot like bone. Just going to say it. Especially when it's making direct contact at a high rate of speed with your own bones. Not that I would call for that to any peaceful person, of course. But, when you have a mob charging at the gates of your nation and you do nothing to stop them, Expect that to happen again and again and again, as long as they find soft flesh. It's human nature. People will take anything that's not bolted down. They will take whatever you give them. And that's why the giving tree ended up as nothing but a stump. He gave and he gave until he had nothing left to give. So, with that said, I will see you folks back here in the next one.